Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now, today's video, I'm going to be going over how to get rid of addictions once and for all. So, what if I told you that your addiction or your addictions is not what you think it is? So, we know about the mundane level when it comes to addiction. We know that we may be, addicted to some sort of substance, some sort of activity, or any of these things, any of these sorts of things. But what if I tell you that you are not necessarily addicted to these things? Right? I know it sounds crazy, but in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the metaphysical explanation when it comes to addictions and your addictions that you may be susceptible to at this point in your life, right? So we know, like I said, we all know about the mundane level when it comes to addiction, but this video is going to give you another perspective, give you another look on how you can see these things called addictions and how you can overcome them, right? See these addictions as something totally different. Look at it from a different lens. Look at it from a different perspective. All right. So let's not waste any time and let's go ahead and get started. So before we get into it, let's go over what an addiction is, right? So according to Google, addiction is the fact or condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. So like I said, we may be struggling with certain things, within this matrix, right? We may have some sort of, porn addiction. I know for me in my life, I used to have a porn addiction and a food addiction. So I know the feeling. I know what you're going through. If you're somebody out there that's watching this video and you have some sort of, vice or thing that you can't, get rid of, that you're trying to quit, I know the feeling. So we may be going through a struggle, like a spiritual, mental, physical struggle when it comes to these things. We may have some sort of porn addiction. We may have an alcohol addiction, gambling addiction, sex addiction, drug addiction, weed addiction, nicotine addiction. We have all these sorts of vices and things that we're struggling to get rid of, right? And we think that we are, incapable of getting rid of these things. We're incapable of letting ourselves go and letting ourselves free when it comes to getting rid of these vices, right? So in this video, keep watching this video, right? And you're going to see how you're going to break these addictions, right? Because I'm going to give you some things. I'm going to give you some valuable lessons and things that you can do in order to overcome and to combat these situations that you're in right now. So once we start looking at it from a metaphysical perspective, we can start looking at ourselves and our entire situation in a totally different light, right? So let's look at it from that perspective. Instead of telling ourselves things such as, I have an addiction, or I have a problem, we have to realize this truth, okay? So what is that truth exactly? I'm gonna tell you that truth. That you are consciously not addicted. It is your subconscious mind that's holding on to the addiction, right? So what do I mean by that? What I mean by when I say you are not necessarily addicted to these things, right? It is your subconscious that's holding on to this addiction. It's your subconscious that's holding on to these vices. It's your subconscious that's holding on to these ideas and ways of life. Okay? So we need to stop identifying ourselves with the physical body, right? So it's important for us to not identify yourself with the physical body. It's important for you to not identify yourself with the physical body, right? I'm not saying that you are separate from your body. I'm not saying to neglect your body. I'm not saying to look down on your body or talk negatively about yourself and things of this nature. But most people, when they encounter a certain addiction or when they encounter a certain problem that they can't get rid of, they can't seem to get rid of, and they just blame themselves. They believe that they are undisciplined. They believe that they are incapable of, staying clean or getting clean, right? When we're on this spiritual walk, when we're on this path, it don't have to be necessarily spiritual, but, self-improvement. You could be on your self-improvement journey. right? It's a hard road to walk. It's a hard road to cross, right? So it may happen at the beginning, right? At the beginning stage of your self-improvement journey or your spiritual journey, or it can happen in the middle, right? Because, especially when you're on this narrow path, when it comes to self-improvement or just developing yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, you're going to encounter these problems, right? Like they say, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. We're all going to go through something, some sort of thing within this matrix, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you are undisciplined or that you are weak or you're incapable of doing these things. You're incapable of getting rid of these vices and addictions and things of this nature. But it is your subconscious mind that's being manipulated. It's your subconscious mind that's being told or being, redirected in a certain direction that goes against what you are trying to do, what you are trying to accomplish, right? So it's important for us to not identify ourselves with the physical body, because you are more than the physical body, right? Your soul and your spirit, they're not addicted to these things, right? It's the subconscious mind, it's the physical body that's addicted to these things. But once you redirect yourself within, right, and start developing yourself on a metaphysical level, on a spiritual level, then your consciousness, your soul, your spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, is able to intervene and step in, especially when you build your spirit up, especially when you build, your spiritual currency and things of this nature. You're able to do things to where you're able to rewire the subconscious mind to where you were able to no longer rely on these different things, rely on these physical things for spiritual nourishment. Okay? So all these vices, I'm not sure if you're able to see this because I wrote them real small to try to fit on the board. I need to get a bigger board, but I'm going to read out loud to you just in case you can't see it. But all these vices keep you in the physical. When experiencing addiction, you are unconsciously trying to fill a void with something physical instead of returning to the Godhead by going within. So at times, when you're, watching porn every day, when you're drinking every day, when you are eating every day, we can have some sort of food addiction, these sorts of things. We are most of the time unconsciously trying to fill a void that's supposed to be something spiritual, right? Instead of, being close to God, doing necessary work to go into inner space, things of this nature, like doing yoga, meditation, prayer, fasting, things of this sort. Instead of being in communion, yoga as well, instead of being in communion with God every single day, we are trying to fill a void within ourselves that's something higher than the matrix, that's higher than the physical, right? When we're indulging in certain activities, when we're constantly gorging ourselves with food, when we're constantly scrolling on social media, going on trips, seeking love from a significant other, trying to find happiness within somebody else. When we're trying to feel something internally with something physical, it might satisfy ourselves temporarily, but in the long run, it's not going to fulfill us the way we want to, right? So we tend to fill voids within us with something physical. So the physical is a hologram. I need you guys to actually conceptualize this, right? I need you guys to actually conceptualize this and realize and understand this truth. The physical is a hologram. The physical does not exist, right? And you don't exist. I don't exist. Only your spirit exists. Only your soul exists, right? So once we start thinking about it from that perspective, then we can do the necessary things in order to reprogram ourselves, reprogram our subconscious mind to where we no longer need these certain vices, or we no longer need these physical objects or these certain activities, right? So me, for example, I don't exist. Once we level out the ego, once we balance out the ego you know, the ego wants to keep you in fear. The ego wants to keep you in this suppressed state. The ego wants to keep you in this mindset to where you know, if you don't, you know, if you let go of these things, if you let go of these certain things that you are indulged in, then you're not going to feel the same. You're not going to feel happy. You're not going to feel satisfied, right? That's how the matrix manipulates your mind. That's how these certain forces manipulate your mind, right? To where you need these things, right? Just for instance, if you all of a sudden, you know, you don't have enough money to pay your bills and you're about to, you know, lose your house or something, you know, the ego wants to come into play and manipulate you and say that you need to do such and such, such and such in order to make a certain amount of money, instead of relying on faith, relying on the universe, relying on God to fulfill these needs that, you know, require action, that require faith at the same time, right? So the ego wants to put you in fear. The ego wants to put you in this state to where you don't believe in yourself. You don't have resilience. You don't have that faith in a higher power, something that's higher than you, right? So once we, you know, balance out the ego and tell ourselves that we don't exist, I'm not saying that your problems or even yourself means nothing, but when you look at it from the grand scheme of things, when you look at it from a higher perspective, there are many things that are happening within the world. There are many things, you know, within certain regions of the world. There are people that are going through much worse than you, right? There are people, you know, starving. There are people with no electricity, people living in third world countries. You know, many people are going through worse things than you. And then when you look at it from a universal perspective, there are many things that within the universe, within our known universe, you know, that our own universe has its problems that are way bigger than way bigger than our millennial third dimensional problems. See what I'm saying? So I don't exist. This CD visionary persona that I created within this YouTube platform doesn't exist. I don't exist. Only my spirit and my soul that's speaking through me exists. All right. So I'm going to show you this clip, right? It's from the classic Matrix movie, right? We all know the well-known and loved Matrix movie, one of the best movies of all time. I wouldn't even consider it a movie, to be honest. I consider that a documentary. But I'm going to show you this clip that goes into play with what I'm talking about. So be sure to, you know, pay attention to this and dissect this information.
Do we have a deal, Mr. Reagan?
You know, I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss.
All right, so there's another movie actually that's very similar to The Matrix that came out the same year as The Matrix, the first Matrix movie. It's called The 13th Floor. I highly recommend you guys to check out that movie. Right? It wasn't as popular as The Matrix movie, but it's very similar to The Matrix movie. I just watched it recently, about a couple weeks ago or like a month ago. So I highly encourage you guys to check that movie out as well. So when you get into the spiritual realm, and when you start going up, when you start climbing up the ladder in regards to spiritual elevation, spiritual evolution, the devil or your lower nature is going to invent 4,000 things to keep you on the lower level, aka distractions, aka things that mean nothing in your life, things that the world tries to implement, because there's so many things that can distract us in this world. This physical world was created to distract us from going within to achieve that Godhead, to achieve that God level, to achieve that higher consciousness, that super consciousness. That's what we got to realize. This physical world was created to distract us. Okay? New levels equals new devils. All right? So once we have that, once we have that picture that, you know, we have to stay focused as much as we can. We have to, you know, not pay attention so much on the outside, but focus on the inside, focus on the inner world, right? I'm not saying to cut out, you know, TV and social media and things like that altogether, but everything requires balance, right? Everything requires balance. Why? This is one of the laws of Ma'at, right? Balance is key. Everything has to have balance, right? It's within the known world and within the universe, as above, so below, all right? So when dealing with these vices, over time you are creating an energetic frequency, entity, or parasite that feeds off of you and your addiction. The parasites are both physical and spiritual. So from a physical perspective, let's say we are, you know, eating toxic foods. We are eating processed foods. We are eating, you know, GMO foods and things of this sort. Right, when we're eating these things, we're eating these certain types of foods, right? This creates or manifests parasites within the body, right? When we're, you know, certain ingredients that's within the food, like high fructose corn syrup and, you know, all these different things, all these different chemicals that's within the food. When we're eating these certain foods, it's manipulating the dopamine receptors within the mind, right? And over time, as you start eating these sugary foods, it manifests into parasites within the body. And these physical parasites, right, manipulate your mind, right? You ever, you know, I can attest to this too, because like I said, I had a food addiction. You ever, you know, you're just out and about, you might be out somewhere, then all of a sudden you just have this stop for food. Right, you're not even hungry, but you just have this stop for food, and you just want to gorge yourself with food. These are parasites. These are physical and spiritual parasites that's manipulating your mind to want to eat food. Right, they are tricking you. They are manipulating your subconscious mind to feed themselves. They're not worried about your health. They're not worried about your safety. They're not worried about your well-being at all. They care about themselves because that's the only way they can survive. That's the only way they can thrive is by feeding onto these sugary foods. But that's what these parasites like. Parasites like sugary processed foods, right? And on a spiritual level, when we're indulging in these things, because everything is energy, we have to remember that everything is made up of energy, right? And so when we're constantly feeding into these addictions, feeding into porn, feeding into food, feeding into alcohol, right? When you're drinking, you start to black out. These are spiritual parasites that are taking over your body, right? And once we're, you know, indulging in these things and putting so much energy and effort, right, into these things, into these activities, then that's when these spiritual parasites start to grow and grow and grow and grow. That's why over time it's so hard to get rid of these addictions. It's so hard to, you know, stay disciplined to get off these things because you have created this entity. You have created this energetic frequency. You have created these spiritual parasites that have attached to you, that have attached to your body. And now they feed off of these things, right? That's why when you try to quit, when you try to fast, right, it feels uncomfortable. So why do you think it feels uncomfortable when you try to stop? It's these spiritual parasites. It's these spiritual entities that's feeding off of you, that's attached to you, right? So we have to understand that addiction is more than just, you know, what you've known about the mundane, in accord to the mundane. This goes beyond the physical. This is a spiritual thing. Everything is spiritual, right? Like I said, as above, so below. Everything manifests in the physical before it everything manifests in the spiritual before it manifests in the physical. So it's not you that needs to quit, right? It's not necessarily you that needs to quit, right? You are the soul. You are the spirit, right? You are not the physical body. So it's not you that needs to quit. It is your subconscious mind that needs to be focused on and aligned. So at the end of the video, I'm going to give you some different ways, different tips. I'm not going to leave you guys hanging, right? We can talk about certain problems. We can talk about, you know, the problems of the world, you know, You know, you see it on the news every day, see it on social media every day. We're always bombarded with news and, you know, bad news and things like this. It's an agenda behind it. It's to keep us in fear, to keep us in turmoil, to keep us in chaos, and to, you know, think of the world as this bad place and things like that. You know, it's fear propaganda. It's feeding fear into the mind, right? But there's not enough solutions. There's not enough people giving out solutions to these problems. So I'm going to give you some things on, you know, how to break this cycle that you are in. So the subconscious, we have to remember this as well. The subconscious doesn't know whether something is real or not real, right? I touched on this many times in my other videos. The subconscious doesn't know whether something is real or not real. Once you condition your mind that you need to consume something, you're programming your subconscious into believing you need this thing in order to thrive and survive, right? So once we reverse it, right? When we reverse it, and you know, you are, you know, things such as affirmations, right? When we're telling ourselves these things, like we are divine, we are superior, we are abundant, we are rich, we are prosperous, we are, you know, many of these different things. You are tricking the subconscious mind into thinking that you are these things, right? It's all about being. Touched on this many times in my other videos. It's all about being. We have to be in this state of being. We have to already feel and believe that we can accomplish these things, that we already are these things, right? When we talk about manifestation, you know, it's not about achieving something or you're going to achieve this certain thing or you are becoming this certain thing. You are already that, then some. It's just that the third dimension has to catch up with your manifestations. The third dimension has to catch up with your mind, with your universal mind, because the matrix, the third dimension, is on a time delay, so to speak. So when we're programming our subconscious mind into believing that we are these things, you know, giving ourselves more positive, you know, outlooks on life, more positive messages, things of this sort, when we're stepping into our purpose, stepping into our grind, when we are, you know, striving to become better people, you know, a better family man or a better wife or a better spouse, better father or mother for your kids and things of this sort, that's when we start to, you know, step into that portal. That's when we're going to step into that new way of life, right? We're opening portals for ourselves. It could be a positive portal or it could be a negative portal. We're always opening portals to something greater for something destructive. All right, it all depends on, you know, the nature of the person and the intent behind it, the intent behind the person. So when we're, you know, engaging in these certain things such as addictions, we're programming our subconscious mind into thinking that we need these things, you know, in order to, you know, be happy in these sorts of things. Because like I said, these things, they manipulate the dopamine receptors in your mind, right? It's the dopamine is the pleasure reward center in your brain, right? When we're, you know, we enjoy eating our favorite foods. We enjoy, you know, the things that we do. We enjoy these things temporarily because it delivers a temporary dopamine rush, right? That's why there's a dopamine crisis right now. You know, we have a dopamine crisis right now, especially with the emergence of social media. But once we reprogram ourselves and deliver ourselves and implement a new program within our subconscious, that's when we can start looking at ourselves and these things that we are facing in our lives in a totally different light. So it's not that you are undisciplined. You are disciplined toward that addiction that you are immersed in. So many people, they can be, you know, very disciplined when it comes to their workout regimen. You have people who are addicted to working out. You have people who love to work out every single day. They cannot stop. You have people who are addicted to you know, their craft when it comes to, you know, making music. They go into the studio every day. They go into the studio and they stay in the studio for up to 10 to 12 hours, maybe even more. You have people who are very, you know, addicted and very disciplined towards something positive in their life, right? Then you can be addicted to, you know, certain things that you want to get rid of, but you just can't because you're so disciplined, you're so driven to do these certain things that it's just hard to stop, right? So it's not that you are not disciplined, or you are a failure, or any of these sorts of things, right? That just makes it even more. That just adds more fuel to the fire when you think about yourself in this specific manner. But once we start to look at it differently, once we start looking at it, from a different lens, from a different perspective, then you can begin to, uh, consciously, right, do the necessary things in order to stop these things, stop these specific things that you are indulged in, and to raise yourself up to a new level, right? So, didn't have enough room on this board, but I want to share this. That's why it's important for us to develop a new program to the point where we keep that same energy, but convert it to something more positive or productive. So what do I mean by that? Like I mentioned, a lot of people, like fellas, when you're on semen retention, or ladies, if you're, practicing celibacy and things of this sort, they tell you to, convert this energy, convert this sexual energy into something productive, convert this energy into something useful, right? When you're not utilizing that energy, when you're not utilizing that time to work on something that you're passionate about, that energy can work against you. So like I said, these are some of the things that you could be doing right now. Men, like I said, semen retention, ladies, celibacy, fasting. Fasting can, purge these parasites, these entities, this energetic frequency that you have built up over time on these certain addictions. Fasting can, hear a lot of people say this is one of the ancient ways, one of the most profound ways that can, not only get rid of energetic parasites, but to heal the whole body entirely, things of this sort. Converting that sexual energy towards something productive. Like if you've been working on a certain business, right? If you are working on a certain craft, if you, have this, if you want to become a YouTuber, if you want to, just do something that you're passionate about, right? Convert that energy to something productive. Convert that energy into something that will uplift your soul, uplift your spirit. Because like I said, the physical is not real. The physical is a hologram. So we have to focus on the internal. We have to focus on the soul and the spirit. Do whatever makes your soul happy. Do whatever makes your spirit happy, because it's all about the soul and the spirit at the end of the day. Your soul and your spirit came down here for a higher mission, for a higher purpose, right? For a specific mission, right? And that's why it's important for us to focus on this. Focus on the internal. Focus on what your soul and your spirit has come down here for, right? Because like I said, there are many distractions out here, many different ways that your lower nature tries to create and tries to manipulate your mind into, staying stuck on the lower level, staying stuck within the third dimensional realm, staying stuck within the physical. So that's why it's always important for us to stay focused, stay aligned, and tap into that inner Christos, that inner capability, that inner knowledge, and that inner wisdom, right? Because the universe is within you, right? In the universe, God, the creator, is inside of you, and the God is much stronger, and you are much stronger because you are God. You are much stronger than anything that can be thrown at you, than anything that this reality can throw at you, right? So it's all about baby steps at the end of the day. It's not gonna, you're not going to achieve that level, in one day. That's unrealistic. But, try to find some alternatives. If you are, if you have a nicotine addiction, try implementing nicotine flavored gum. Try to find like healthy substitutes, right? Healthy substitutes, healthy alternatives toward your addiction, right? And then once you start climbing up the ladder, that's when you start, you'll be able to, get rid of these addictions completely. Because you have some people who are just able to put this stuff away. They can just, take a sip, take a smoke, take a hit, they can just throw it out. But you have a lot of people who are, just when they take that first hit, that's why I advise you all, if If you're peer pressuring to doing something, trying something, don't do it at all, right? If you think you're a person who might become addicted to a certain thing very easily, I highly advise you all to not even partake in it at all. But if you have gotten to that point, try. It's all about baby steps. Taking one step at a time, trying to find, alternatives, healthy alternatives. All right. Just say, for instance, if you are, eating bad foods, right? Just, try to eat as healthy as you can, and then have certain cheat days, right? You can have like a cheat day, a one cheat day, 2, 3 cheat day. Just eat the foods that you want, eat the foods that you've been eating in the past, and just work your way up to the point where you are no longer interested in eating these types of foods, right? So it's all about baby steps at the end of the day, taking it one step at a time. And then, if you implement these words that I'm speaking, implement these teachings, implement these practices into your life, you'll see that you will see yourself in a totally different light, see your situation in a totally different light, and you'll be able to transform yourself for the better, and you'll be able to get rid of these addictions once and for all. All right. So this is how to get rid of addictions once and for all. Hopefully you guys have learned something from this video. Hopefully you have taken some insight, looking at yourself in a totally different way. Give this video a thumbs up if it helped you, if it resonated with your soul and spirit. And yeah, till next time. And always remember, all power resides from within. And always keep the faith, because God in the universe is always working for you. Take care, guys, and God bless.